Happy Tuesday, ladies and gents. Yellowstone World. This is the Yellowstone podcast with Watchers in the Basement. I am Franklin Cooper.
I'm Marcy Gonzalez.
You muted, Tristan. You muted. Oh, there you go.
So just a little lag. Oh, I'm
He's
unmuted.
Tristan Jones.
Thank you. Yeah,
And we'll,
it's a lag. I'm telling you, it's a lag. So like I
okay,
clicked it unmute, and 10 seconds later it unmuted. So I don't know.
no
This
worries.
hasn't happened before. I'm
No
Tristan
worries.
Jones.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement. So today we're going to talk about Yellowstone, season 5, episode 4, which is called Horses in Heaven. And there's a lot of symbolic meaning with that title. But again, great episode. Let's just do a quick roundtable what we thought about the episode as a whole. Marcy?
Um, I thought it was a good episode overall. I think it's still a little bit slow. It's setting up some major plot points, which has been kind of my take on the previous episodes. So it feels like it's ramping us up for more action, but lots of Beth drama still.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tristan?
For me, like I thought it was a slow episode too, but like slow in a good way. I think it was better like than last week's episode, which was slow in a not bad way, but not necessarily a memorable way outside of the ending. This episode like was filled with so many like rich, small moments between the characters, like that really made this episode memorable for me. So big love this episode. Like I said, like Marcy said, it is setting up so many different plot points and conflicts, and you can see kind of like the foreshadowing of some of those conflicts in the first few episodes of this season. But thoroughly enjoyed episode 4.
I did too. I thought it was a great way to set up a lot of things for towards the middle and end of the season. Um, with a lot of the characters in the show and in this episode, you saw a lot of characters facing adversity and learning themselves a little bit more about what's to come. And I mean, when you look at Rip, I think Rip's still trying to hold on to grips of like this new beginning for John and like not and like being the guy. Bev trying to deal with her impulse issues of trying to keep things on the wraps, especially with her father being governor. Jamie coming to grips of like a secret coming out, and we'll talk about that as well. That he wasn't ready to tell the world. So there are a lot of character reveals of like characters facing adversity and trying to adhere to those challenges. So I definitely love the episode as well as a whole. But let's jump into it. So one of the opening scenes is Beth finally getting picked up from the station. From Jamie picks her up. So Jamie found a way to get her bail her out. Um, Beth Beth's upset that she was in there for so long in the first place, which wasn't that long at all. I think when you assault somebody with a with a glass bottle in the bar, that privilege says something about you being at literally the next day. But
Right.
let's talk about that scene. Marcy, what do you think about that scene with Beth and Jamie?
With Beth and Jamie, it was again like you mentioned it, like Beth's privilege was just like kind of shining through, and she was just kind of like, Jamie, like, you need to get me out of here and you need to like make this go away. And I'm like, how easy do you think it is to do that, Beth? So it was entertaining. And I also liked when she was talking to the woman that she was sharing the cell with. I think they had, like a really great exchange. And Beth's telling her like what she's in there for, aggravated assault, and then the other woman's like, wow, like, so you're a legit criminal. And Beth just had like a good quote that I liked. She said, I am the wrath of a woman scorned. So I just think like that encapsulates Beth so much. So I really enjoyed that scene too.
For
Absolutely.
me, it's interesting to talk about Beth's privilege in that jail scene because it's kind of juxtaposed with Higgins later on in the episode, who's like, "Hey, I did a year and kind of ate that." You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like she's surviving. You know what I'm saying? So that definitely adds more layers to the the back and forth that they have basically over John in different ways. Um, yeah, like very like I enjoyed that scene too. Very like especially the jail cell scene with Beth and the woman in Tank Witter, like Marcia said, like you do see like some kind of bond between them. Like then neither one of them are really criminals. It's like neither one of them can really believe what the other is in for. So thoroughly enjoyed that.
Texas Parter had a comment about that scene. She asked a question: why did Jamie not call Rip to come get her so he didn't have to deal with that? I would
That's
have.
what I was thinking too. I'm like, Rip, where are you? Like, go get your wife. So
I
yeah,
think
that's
I
exactly
think
what
there's a multiple reasons why he didn't do that. I think one, he knows that Jamie is a lawyer. He's a lawyer expert. He knows the law. He knows how to finagle his way out of certain situations. I think it was needed for Jamie to go there instead, only because um, Beth needs legal help, and Jamie's that guy. And also, I think too, John would have been upset if it wasn't Jamie, because Jamie is pretty much the unofficial right hand man when it comes to legal matters for John.
he's
And
the
so
fixer.
yeah, so I think that's why he's ultimate fixer. Rip's a fixer in a totally different manner. So I think that was the right fixer to come, get Beth out of there.
I'm just saying, after Jamie did his lawyer thing, he should have just been like, you need to call Rip or call somebody else because I'm not going to take you. But I think it goes back to Jamie's always trying to like help and do extra, even though like they have a strained relationship, but also she has like all this leverage on him too. So I think that's why he eventually gave her the ride. And then we know what happened after that. That unleashed a whole can of worms.
I honestly forgot about the whole baby aspect. I totally forgot about it until this episode. And Jamie, being the cunning lord that he is, bro, pulled the baby seat out of the goddamn car. You would have saved yourself a whole lot of heartache and pain. Now, don't get me wrong. This is still going to happen in some form of fashion. I mean, she's going to blow regardless. The minute she finds out you have a kid, but at least for the time being, put a goddamn chair seat out of the car. You
Like
know,
that was my first thought. I was like, you couldn't anticipate, like, hey, maybe let me move this so it doesn't cause more drama. This chick crazy. Uh, but no, I agree with you. Like, I definitely think he had to be there. Like, that's his role. And I don't think Rip necessarily wants to deal with Beth in that direct confrontational mode. You know what I'm saying? Like he likes to deal with her in a more comfortable mode. Like she's gonna be confrontational anyway. That's Beth, but like that's not what Rip is for. Like you said, like his skill set is needed in other areas. On the ranch or off the ranch, whatever. But yeah, he had to be like that. Had to be a Jamie thing, and like those two are just gonna have to face each other, and Jamie's gonna have to kind of grow some nuts, for lack of a better term, and like he has some leverage on Beth to a degree. Like he has to be able to step up and use that. Otherwise, yeah, she's going to bully him for the rest of his life, and he's gonna have to scream in his car like after she bests him, for the 1,000th time in a row.
to further discuss that scene as well, since we're on the topic, there were some things said from Beth that made me cringe. For one, I think children are blameless. I don't think talking about harming a child or taking a child away from a parent, unless the parent's abusive. But there was some lines that she said. I quote, "I would can't wait to take your son away. Your your son is mine." These are, and I couldn't really understand what she meant by that. Did she mean murdering the child? Did she mean kidnapping the child? Like I didn't know what she meant by that. But even for Beth's purposes, I thought that was very, very some damning remarks, especially with a small child. Because in season 4, you kind of see her make some progress when it comes to like affection in a way, like taking in Carter last season, saying harboring that relationship with him,
Mhm.
and pretty much giving Carter a home. So seeing that Beth regress a little bit with that, I thought was pr- pretty upsetting for me. Marcy, what about you?
Yes, I agree. And here's like my notes when I saw that scene. I put Beth and Jamie driving home. She discovers he has a kid. Beth loses it. Very deep wounds that she needs to heal. Go to therapy. So that like is my whole take. And yeah, I like Texas Potterhead's comment. Like it will be fun to like have Beth like meet her match because she is kind of on a different level of unhinged now. Especially that car scene was like very difficult to watch. Obviously, on one hand, you can understand her pain of everything that she's gone through. But then I also went back and watched episode 5 of season 3 when it kind of shows like what actually happened between them. And again, like, I don't think Jamie did it with malice, right? I don't think he was like, yes, like, you know, we have to get you an abortion and like you're going to get a hysterectomy and like whatever. I think like he being young and still wanting to like protect the family and protect John and protect Beth, like he did what he thought he had to do, right? Like whether it was right or wrong, like it was something that he did. So like I understand her anger towards him, but she definitely has to deal with all of that anger and all of that hurt and resentment because I think it's ultimately going to be her downfall. She's going to let all of this like toxicity consume her. So please go to therapy, Beth, please.
For me, just kind of looking at that scene, like to kind of piggyback off Marcy, yes, what he did was absolutely horrible, even for his age at the time. But since then, like the last few seasons have been this kind of like Jamie torture that is really uncomfortable to watch in a lot of areas. Like they literally treat him like he's the devil. And I'm like, and then, you know, maybe I have to go back and rewatch. I'm like, man, how many really shitty things has Jamie done? Like, I know he's done some things that, you know, they don't like. He's done some things that might have been unscrupulous, whatever, especially in his legal battles that he's been taking, you know, for the family and the ranch. But like, I don't think it's necessarily deserving of this like sadist, like masochistic torture that he's taken at the hands of Beth and John, honestly, to the point like they just disrespect this man. It's like for sport in his face. And again, this it has to boil over at some point. Like every great TV show that we watch, when something's going one way for so long, it has to come back the other way. And I'm interested to see how Jamie just regains his own leverage as a man, as an individual, somebody with their own agency and not like the lapdog for his kind of sister and kind of father. You know what I'm saying? So I'm interested to see how that plays out going forward.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Tristan, on that regard. Like, because like watching that scene, even last season, the finale, when Beth pretty much made him kill his father, his biological father, I was going through my head trying to think like, what all did he do that was just so fucked up? Like, I mean, yes, he has some character dysfunctions about him as well, but outside of the hysterectomy thing, I know you hit Beth in season 1, got in a fight in the car, and like not going to see John right in the hospital. Um, Outside of that, there's not many things. It's all childhood things that are connected with Beth with the hysterectomy and John not not seeing Jamie beyond what he is. Like I know with John's proud of, even with Lee and Casey, those guys are strapping men, they're man's men, right? Like you know, the Cowboys are hard. You know, they are like walking reminders of John in some form of light. Where Jamie is, he's the intelligent guy, he's the studious guy, he went to law school. Like he's just so different from John. And I don't want to say um John blames him for that, but I think there's a low level of relations with as far as like being relatable with Jamie, his I guess adopted son at that point.
I mean, part of it is some of it is self hate. You know, some of it is you know self regret. Like John also has to think about the mistakes he made with Jamie and how these have played into his lack of trust in Jamie. Like this is John being mad at John primarily, and Jamie's really just the vehicle for John's like not self hate, but you know self regret, uh, whatever, you know, just self criticism. Um, and again, that has to come back some way. Like at some point, either Jamie has to break off from his family completely, or he has to be let back into the fold. But this like contentious relationship that we just see play out in so many different ways, it can't stand for too long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed that he's still mentally put together and still showing mental fortitude with all that he's been through with Beth and John. Because even with Casey, like there's a mutual respect with Casey and Jamie. Even when Jamie didn't go see John in the hospital, Casey was trying to find out, make excuses like, hey, he's been
Mhm.
busy. He wouldn't do this. Like he's not part of what happened with John. He always, I mean, from what it looks like, he always had Jamie's back in that form of fashion. Um, but to get back to the show, so let's talk about one of the early scenes in the beginning of the episode, the policy advisors meeting. So, so John is walking with his assistant, and the assistant tells him that you have a meeting coming up right now, and but technically the meeting wasn't really for John. It was just a policy meeting that was put together on a calendar to discuss policy, but John wasn't invited to that meeting. So John walks in, and to make a long story short, his I believe his chief of policy advisor, Stanley Roberts, they have a sage grousing solar panel
Mhm.
meeting about moving all the sage grass from the lands so they can own 7,000 acres to implement solar panels. And so John is like, so are we not going to think about the how it's going to affect agriculture and the population? And Stanley had nothing to say, and he goes ahead and not only fires Stanley, but fires his whole staff, saving $1.6 million in revenue, salaries, and benefits. Um, Tristan, what was your thought about that scene as a whole?
Um, so I thought it was encouraging in one way because you see John at least considering like the stakeholders of these policies, and you can tell like some of the subtext of that scene was too many politicians or politician teams fail to like really consider all the stakeholders in some of these policies that they propose and they discuss and they debate back and forth between each other. And there's also played out with the educators meeting when it was brought up because it's like, yo, we have an educators meeting without educators. Like that doesn't make sense. Um, so it was encouraging to see John, thinking beyond just his own bubble and his own self-interest. Um, Also kind of discouraging in some ways because firing the whole team just off that, like, I think this is what the second or third time he just walked into a room and fired people. Like impulse control, like I think John's major impulse because of the world that he's been king of for so long is just
Mm.
to be the king in the room and like I'm just going to dismantle and things will always work out around me because I'm me. And I think he's entering into a world where so much stuff is out of his control and he's going to learn that like he can't really just follow some of his first or second impulses. Like he's going to have to be more patient. And I think that meeting at the lunch that he had with Lynette like was so important because she's kind of laying that out for him. You have to be patient in some ways. You have to be flexible in some ways. You can't be so intractable. Like you have like here's the game to like the game within the game that you're playing in this position that you're in. So I thought it was a nuanced scene. We see John in a different light as a politician because he's a rancher and because he, in a way, looks out. Is part of like um, the non-elite. I would argue that he's definitely an elite in the class that he's in, but also again, like you start to see like some of the issues that his children have can also stem from him. You know what I'm saying? As much of a G that we know him to be, he's an impulsive G, and that's like Beth. It could possibly get him hemmed up in this role that he has as governor.
Marcy?
Yeah, I love how you talked about the impulse control. Yes, like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I loved that whole scene about the educators luncheon, like be working in that field of education was like, yeah, it's like, why do we always have all of these things for educators? And the educators aren't there. It's always like the superintendents and like, everybody else but the educators. So I really loved that. And then also when he's talking to the policy advisors, Stanley's like, well, I haven't even had a chance to meet you because, she wasn't scheduling lunches for you. And he said, well, you could have just come to my office. I think John is used to that, like being a rancher, that's his way of life. Like you just build relationships that way, just by like going over and talking to each other. But I think like he's seeing that like government can be like very corporate as well, right? Like very bureaucratic. So sometimes you don't feel like you can just go over to like your boss's office and just pop in and say, hey, like you feel like it has to be very scheduled and on the calendar. But I like the nuance of like that whole conversation about the sagebrush and the sage grouse, because it shows that um, not all policies are like good, right? All the time. Like they're doing this because of environmental concerns, but they're not seeing how, even though this may be like a more green solution, it still has repercussions on the environment and the sage grouse. So I really like the nuance showing just like one alternative may not be like 100% great, but it may be better than like what we had been doing before. So I really like that whole interaction. Um, and then, yes, I'm glad that Linnell kind of took him to lunch and was like, hey, you need to like get yourself an environmental like policy advisor. So I just really love how like she's a woman and she's having to school him. Whereas like I think where he comes from, it's usually the men that are doing a lot of like everything. So it's refreshing to see like this woman in a position of power who's able to kind of be his guide and his mentor.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that teacher pupil dynamic between John and Linnell for sure. John, it's like John takes two steps forward and one step forward and two steps back. And the earlier episodes of season five, he's pretty much making it all about himself being governor. Like I got to take care of the ranch, got to make sure my family's secure, oh, and then everybody else. And then you see a little bit of growth in that scene where he's talking about the educators meeting, talking about I'm not gonna come because if there's no teachers there, there's no point in me even showing up. When there's teachers there, let me know. I'm like, yes, you're learning, you're progressing. And then the very next scene, he goes into the into the meeting, positive meeting, and fires his whole staff. I wish he would have just so and that's part of politicking and government. You have people with different opinions. You discuss those opinions and you find a mutual ground. I think a smarter way for John to go about that is the minute that him and Stanley Roberts uh, didn't agree on something, you talk to Stanley, you tell him your position, you meet as a group that's already there, you discuss your position, you hear them out, and you find common ground. You can't just fire people off of one opinion and one position and just go on about your day. If you're gonna do that, you're gonna be firing people every damn week. And I think it it, it would have been great if Lynette had a conversation with him before finding everybody. But yeah, that was a great scene to show that John says a lot to learn. Just because you're a powerful ranch uh with political power in Atlanta, Montana, when it comes to ranch and livestock, doesn't always transcend into government. So that was a great scene. Quite sad scene to see people lose their jobs, but a good scene nonetheless. Um, now the very next scene is there's more politicking going on. Parks and Wildlife is in his office the talking about the missing wolves, the colored wolves that turned up missing. So they approached John about it, and one of the reasons why they approached John about it, not only that he's governor, but also because they turned up missing on John's land. So they kind of unofficially, but officially, but unofficially, kind of like think John and his people are involved with the missing colored wolves. Marcy, what are your thoughts on that scene?
I like that scene because, like, you see the fish and wildlife officers are like, hey, like, we get it. Like, we understand, like, if you had to do this, but like, we're not the ones who are tracking this. You're going to have a bigger problem with like the nonprofits and the environmental groups that are tracking this. So I think that's, again, setting up like a bigger problem that's coming up. But I also don't know like where they're going with this, because I looked it up and like I may be wrong, but like you can't shoot a wolf inside of Yellowstone, but once they like go outside of Yellowstone and they're on somebody else's land and they're like being a threat and like killing cattle, I think I read that like then it's okay. So can't they just say like they were on our land, they weren't part of the park? So like maybe the information I got was wrong, or maybe they're just trying to set this up for more drama. But I want to see where this is going because, again, it goes back to yes, caring about the environment is like something that we should all do. But again, maybe some environmental groups, they take it to an extreme where they're maybe like not just looking out for the environment and for animals, but they're just kind of have other agendas. So that was a good scene too, to just kind of tee up again, hopefully something more that's going to come with this wolf storyline.
For me, like I think the issue is that, or one of the issues is that they, hid the evidence. It's always the cover up. I think, like you said, like if they would have just said, "Hey, they're wolves. They're killing our cattle. We peeped them from afar. Decided, hey, we don't want to get up close with wolves. Shot them from afar, and then we saw that they were Yellowstone Park. Like, but this all started because the wolves were on the land killing cattle. So like they should have done that, but what they did was, more egregious in burying the wolves somewhere and then removing the collar and stuff like that. So then it becomes this thing that you have to just keep chasing. Rip had to deal with him. Now John is having to deal with him, and like you said, it's going to become a much bigger issue. Whereas they probably could have, um, got it settled, from the beginning. And I think another issue that this is causing is, I think this is going to reflect on Rip because Rip ultimately made the decision to, remove the collars and send them up the river and stuff like that. Not his best decision. I understand. Not his best decision. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is also setting up the, I guess, the inevitable, like, who's going to succeed me conversation, right? Like, here we are with the Roys again, like the inverse. Like, nobody actually wants this shit. But like, so, like, Rip looks like the natural successor, right? Casey's has family issues. Jamie is Jamie. Like, Beth is unstable, and Rip knows the business. He just doesn't know, like, the street smart, I guess, things that you need to do to be the king of that world, which John is going to need somebody to be. But this, yeah, like this whole thing really, honestly, through very little fault of his own, started with Rip and making that decision. So that's a storyline I'm interested to see going forward.
Texas Party had asked a question about the shooting of the color wolves. She says, "Is it because the land has been placed in a conversation of easement?" Um,
That's
it
a good
could,
point. I hadn't thought of that.
yeah, I didn't think about that either. That might be a good point. Um, because what threw me off when the Cowboys shot the wolves, and they called Rip, because the Cowboys had panicked. It wasn't like because these are experienced Cowboys. They've been around for years on John's ranch. But when they shot the wolves, it was eating the cattle. They didn't say, "Oh, well, we should be good because they were on our land eating our cattle." They panicked, and then Rip, who's also an experienced rancher, panicked as well. So I don't know if it's just some type of law under no circumstance, kind of like with bears, unless you're like absolutely like your life's in danger. If you shoot a color wolf, like shooting a bear, it's a federal crime. Maybe that could be the point, because it threw me off how three experienced cowboys slash ranchers freaked out of wolves being on their land eating their cattle.
We need some clarity on this. We should reach out to Taylor Sheridan and be like, hey, you wrote this. Explain it.
Can somebody tell me what a conservation easement is? I've heard it for 2 episodes now, and like I still don't know what the fuck that shit is. Nor
I
am
know
I late. Nor am I like motivated enough to look it up. So
I need to look it up as well, because I've heard that term before, when it came to his land, and when it came to the airport and stuff too. So I'm not sure. We gotta look that up as well. If Texas Party, if you know, please break it down for us, so we can know for ourselves. Um, so to go back, so let's go back a little bit. So Miss Brewer is the lady that Bev attacked at the bar. So she's meeting with authorities and Jamie about her decision to want to press charges. And Jamie brings up a good point of and I didn't know this until I watched the episode. So apparently in a bar fight, there's no such thing as self-defense in a bar fight. Maybe I don't know that that's a Montana thing or just a bar fight in all 50 states. but apparently Miss Brewer didn't know that either. And Jamie pretty much said that you're also a defendant. You're not plaintiff in this case if you decide to sue. So again, that's Jamie just again showing his value as a veteran member of this family and on John's staff, saving Beth again. Talk about that scene, Marcia, about Miss Brewer and Jamie.
Uh, when I heard like what apparently she'd said to Beth, I was like, you know what? Like maybe like I might not have hit her with like the beer bottle, but I also probably would have been like super pissed as hell. So yeah, good to know that in a bar fight, there's no self-defense claim. But she also has a point, right? Like pretty much like Beth gets to hit her with a beer bottle and assault her and just like do a night in jail and like that's it. And again, that like reeks of privilege. Like you did this to this woman, you assaulted this woman, you hit her with a beer bottle, you like gave her a huge black eye, and like that's all you do. You just go spend a night in jail. And I think what was like the final thing that they charged her with, like disorderly conduct or something like that. And then you
Mm-hmm.
just have community service and that's it. So on some level, I was like, yes, you should not have said that. Like, I probably would have been very angry too if you said that about my husband. But also, Beth, like, that's incredibly privileged. So,
I mean, I thought it showed both of their privilege, to be honest.
yeah.
One, the fact that she didn't know that there's no self-defense in a bar fight tells me that it might be something that's specific to Montana or just like the states around that region. Two, again, like major privilege. Like, you know how much privilege you have to have as a woman on this earth to walk up to a woman, for a man to tell you I'm married. You then leave said man, walk up to the woman he's pointing at and says she's staring a hole at you because she's pissed, for you to further escalate by saying I'm going to not necessarily violate because she does not have possession over Rip's body, but I'm going to violate your home and your marriage, and I'm going to make you, and I want you to watch, or you can watch if you want to. Hey man, I I understand that we have laws and we have rules, and I understand you should not, in theory, just hit people over the head with a bottle, because that can lead to very serious consequences for both of you. But with that said, however, if you say the things that she said, and oh, good, I'm so glad. Like, hey, that's beautiful writing to not let us hear it at the end of the last episode, and for it to only come out when Jamie says it. That's exquisite. Shout out to you, Taylor. However, if you say those things where I'm from, I don't know where that woman is from. I don't know.
California, apparently.
California. Yeah, she's from California.
Okay, she might be from like Malibu or some shit, man. OC, whatever the fuck. But from where I'm from, where I'm Normandy and Western, you say some shit like that, you're going to get assaulted. And again, that's privilege. Like there's privilege both ways. Beth obviously did that with the understanding that she was going to get away with it. Otherwise, I don't know how much she would have hit her over the head with that bottle. But that woman, absolutely, I gave her too much credit. I think Marcy, you and I talked about it. Like she might have been a plant for market equities. If she's not a plant for market equities, that woman's a moron, capital M moron. Like, you
Very
should not
much
do
so.
that. You should not do that. That's dumb. Why would you do that? That's really stupid. So that's what I thought about that scene, honestly, in a nutshell. Again, that's Jamie showing his value. He can be ruthless when he needs to be. And I just wish he kind of returned some of that fire with Beth. Like, honestly, like, use that ruthlessness that you do professionally to get this woman off your fucking back, because she resides there.
And it looks like she was solo in that bar too. Like I don't think she was with anybody. On top of that, it's a cowboy bar in Montana, in Bozeman, Montana. Fights break out just because on a regular Tuesday night. So for her to even think that she had the privilege and can walk away unharmed that's amazing to me. Um, Brittany, our main correspondent, says, I haven't watched Yellowstone, but it sounds like I need to with all this energy going around. I've been telling you, Brittany, for the last 2 years, you gotta get on the show. It's lovely. Beth will be your spirit animal. I already know. Um, Going a little bit up in the chat, Texas Part Head broke down the meaning of a conversation. Conversation is a conversation easement. Conversation conversation.
Conservation.
Say it again.
Conservation.
Conservation. Conservation easement is a voluntary legal agreement that permanently limits the use of the land in order to protect its conservation values. So, by that meaning, are the cattle that John has, they're not supposed to graze on that land because it's messing with the values of that land. Is that what that means? So should the cattle not be there in the first place for the wolves to even attack them? That's what I got from that definition.
Yeah, we need to brush up on our land knowledge.
Yeah,
Even
but
though we're from Texas, like we're not from like country Texas, as you can tell.
absolutely. So next is the funeral scene. So Monica and Casey are burying their son John, and from afar, John and Beth are talking, and John's pretty much just telling her, "Look, man, like to put you on game, you fucking up. I'm governor now. You can't be doing all of these, having these outbursts and harming people. Impulse control, which Tristan alluded to, as the theme of this episode. T, what did you think about that conversation, or that real short conversation between Beth and John?
I mean, I think John said a lot without saying too much. Like he told, like we're gonna have a long talk, and Beth at this point knows her father and knows how to kind of get away from, the biggest part of his wrath. Kind of eases out of that, and he's like, "Oh no, well, then we'll have a short one." You know what I'm saying? Like I think he said everything he needed to say in really what 5 words, 6 words. So again, it's a talk that's been necessary for those two because Beth has been on a uncontrollable streak, honestly, for since the beginning of the fucking show, and the stakes are higher. And I think that part of like some of like the look, the facial expressions that he gives to her before he says, "Hey, impulse control," and after he says it, there's so much that's unsaid. It's like, "Hey, I'm fucking governor. These are the stakes. You need to be an asset and not a liability." And that shit is a major liability because, as Lynette, let him know, like, hey, if she gets convicted and you pardon her now, you're done politically. Like you lose so much of your credibility. Um, so yeah, like it's a conversation that needed to be made and needed to happen. And I love how John just kind of did not let her squirm her way out of like that necessary talk. Now somebody needs to have that talk with John, but we already discussed that.
And then also the episode before, John made her chief of staff. Like John fired his chief of staff the episode before. So outside of just having these impulses, you are the handler of your father on the political front. His chief of staff can't be in and out of jail knocking bitches over with glass bottles and shit. So there's a certain level of decorum it is being chief of staff. Marcy, what was your take on that scene with John and Beth?
Um, yeah, pretty much like Tristan said, John said a lot without saying a lot. And I think Beth's relationship with John just kind of reminds me of like me and my dad, right? Like we are so much alike and we're always butting heads because we are so much alike. So I think like there's that dynamic with John and Beth too, right? Like Beth has impulse controls definitely, but so does John. So I think maybe in a way, like when he's talking to her and giving her advice, he's also maybe like talking to himself and trying to like, remind himself of what he needs to do. But I liked when she said, like, I don't think they want us here at the funeral. He's like, well, like we're still going to stay here so that they know we cared enough to stay, even though it's far away. I like that John was able to do that and not just kind of be in his feelings about like they didn't tell him about the funeral, so I'm going to get mad about it and not even be here. I thought that was just that showed a lot on John's part to be like, maybe they don't want us here. They didn't tell us about this, but I'm still going to stay here and like pay my respects because it's what I feel is the right thing to do.
Yeah, there's this broad view that John has on his ranch that he needs to learn to apply in his new job, where he's able to kind of see the big picture. Like excellent point about Marcy. Like he did not get in his feelings. Like he didn't let that deter him. He's like, hey, this is what needs to be done. Like I need to be here. I need to show the support. And everything that he's doing in that scene needs to be again applied to the governorship. Like just being able to see the big picture, see the larger field at hand, and not just really looking through this narrow lens. Like his QB vision is like very narrow. Like you need to expand that out. Let's be Peyton Manning and not Michael Vick on those things. But like um, again, and which leads to one of the best John Dutton scenes I can think of in this series, which is the scene that he had with Monica, just consoling. And then, like again, that's a big picture thing, but it's also a really small thing that I think Monica and and Casey can appreciate, because John was able to like shrink himself down into just being a sympathetic or empathetic father-in-law, and not King John Dutton and everything. So I love how he was able to be big King John Dutton to Beth in that moment in a few words, but he was also able to shrink himself and expand his dialogue in order to like really demonstrate for Monica how empathetic and how sincere and genuine he was in that moment, because Monica is naturally distrustful of John and white people in general. You know what I'm saying? And so like it takes a lot. Like when they were living in the house, like John really tried in his own way to like endear himself to Monica, and there was only but so much that she could go, because she understood like one, the danger of the business that they were in, but also that he's responsible for a lot of that danger, and he can be a dangerous person. So I love seeing the shift. Hopefully this is a permanent shift in their relationship. But that's one of the best scenes I've seen from Kevin Costner in the Yellowstone series since it began.
That was probably the most powerful scene from from the position of John being a father. And I know that was his daughter-in-law, but you don't see many soft scenes of John like just giving fatherly advice. That's my dog. I'm sorry, that's my dog in the background. Just ignore him. But you don't see many moments of John giving fatherly advice to his children, let alone his daughter-in-law. And so John really being vulnerable there, and like and speaking from the heart about, hey, this is a tough situation. It's never easy losing a child, but I mean, if there is a silver lining in this, just know that that child, for however long that child was alive, knew your love, and you was the only view that he saw. That I ain't lie, I teared up hearing that, because I wasn't expecting that from John. I would from like Casey, but not from John. Really, not from anybody from this cast. So to get that soft spot was really touching. Marcy, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I loved his vulnerability, how he was able to open up and just like tell her things that he doesn't really tell anybody else because he keeps them bottled up inside. And like I've never experienced child loss, but I the people that I know that have, like, that's kind of like the emotions that they have shared, right? Like, when they've been vulnerable enough to, it's like, yes, the life was short, but like all they knew is to be loved. And that's what like made their life special, even though it was very brief. So that definitely was very emotional. I'm glad that he was able to be that vulnerable with Monica. And I also liked how like Monica's family was there, and like Rainwater and Mo were there, and like Mo and his group was even like digging the grave for the child. And I think like whatever beef like Rainwater and Mo and like the tribe can have with like the ranch and John Dutton, they're able to put that aside and be like, okay, like we know that there's this beef that like has to come to a head and like we have to deal with, but this is more important. So we're going to support Monica and her family, and even Casey, even though he's also part of the family that we have beef with. I think that's just really beautiful, and it just shows like a lot of humanity and maturity that maybe not a lot of other people could do. Like they couldn't get past that and like help out. like they do.
I love Rainwater's character, his arc over the last 5 seasons. When he first gets introduced as the new chief of his people on the reservation, you see him as a threat. Not so much of a as an antagonist, but a challenge for John. And you kind of forget the historical context that's there with the Native Americans of the land being taken, and pretty much all of John's land being a, being a being the Native Americans' land for eons before Anglo Saxons came to this country. So Taylor Sheridan does a good job of like really displaying perspective and some points, but then also kind of blinding the historical context and making John a hero and John the ultimate badass. And that that small scene, even though it wasn't that long, you kind of see because Rainwater's been patient. Like this we're 4 episodes in and they still up to this up to this point even spoke to each other since he's been governor. So I seeing that scene, it showed me grace that Rainwater has. Because market equities, all these other factions that are trying to get at John, they're deploying all these different cunning ways to like defame John and trying to get this land. While Rainwater's trying to be the patient guy, like, look, man, look, I know we have beef. I know this. We're on two sides of the spectrum, but I want to have a conversation and see what can we do to compromise and to where all parties win. And that's why I really respect about Rainwater in this process.
Remember, Rainwater has experience actually leading a large group of people. Like John, both of them have experience being leaders, but in different contexts. Rainwater has the political experience. So he, again, understands how to see the big picture, um, isolate a particular problem, and then attack it. So yeah, he's waiting. Like things are happening. Hey, John just lost a grandson. All these things are happening, with John being governor, so on and so forth. I'm going to wait for my moment, when tensions are down, when, it's just the best time. And then we'll talk about these things. And if Rainwater would have just come in hot, like, oh, you canceled the airport thing, like these are the consequences and blah blah, like, that would have caused more conflict, and they would not. I think they would have. It would have damaged the little alliance that they had. That you really, like you said, like you forget they were adversaries from at the beginning of this series, and they've established so much of an alliance because there's been so many other outside threats coming in. So I mean, we'll probably talk about this at the end, but I really was very fascinated with where that conversation between them could go, right? Because they had an agreement. John became governor. He has to fix these other threats to his land, and that kind of gets in the way of the Rainwater deal and such. So, how do they find common ground? I really want to see that going forward.
Marcy?
Yeah, no, I love I love the character of Rainwater, and I really love the actor too. I think he does a really great job. So I definitely want to see more of that dynamic with John and Rainwater, and even Mo too. Like he's a really great character too.
T, you brought up a good point with Rainwater, his experience of leading people, right? And it goes back to season 1 when he's talking to I think I can't remember who. I don't know, it was a representative, it was a politician that came on the reservation. He's showing her the land, and he talks about his upbringing. He talks about how he didn't know he was even an Arab American. He identified as Mexican. He was adopted by parents, and going learn about his heritage. Going to college. He was top of his class in college. To now leading people. So there was different facets of his life where he faced adversity and he faced dealing with different types of people throughout his professional and personal life, which I think gave him experience to deal with what's going on with John.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Like he's had to adapt to different certain situations. Different from John, he's been a leader in a situation where he wasn't the top dog. Like he wasn't the alpha, I guess, in that alliance or within that organization, that system. Like, yeah, he the chief of your people, but like you still have to answer to other politicians. You still have to all these other people that you have to build with. And John, since he's taking control, yeah, he has alliances with people, but with all these alliances, even with people who had more power than him, it was understood that he had just as much, if not more, leverage than they did. So there was a level of back down that John just has not developed. Being John Dutton, that Rainwater has, and that comes in handy when you need to negotiate, or you need to find common ground with somebody, who's not necessarily an enemy, but you have different interests. And that's where we are with John and Rainwater.
Speaking of interest, so there was a character that showed up last season by the name of Miss Higgins. She was an environmentalist. I don't want to say radical, but very about the environment, and she was in a huge disagreement to what's going on with the environment and how the pollution and everything that's being decided for the state of Montana is being had, and she had a not a servant of peace. I can't remember what she went to jail for, but it was damaging property or something like that. But she got like 10 years for it.
Yeah.
So
I think she punched a cop when they were at like that rally or something. There was a scuffle and like she assaulted a cop, and I think that's what. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think you're right about that. So John tries to save her. The judge was very unforgiving and gave her, I think, 11 years in prison for her act. So fast forward a year later now, because it just takes over a year later. John's not governor, and John is an environmentalist advisor. The minute I heard that, I'm like, I wonder who could fit this job. And later on in the scene, fast forwards to Miss Higgins in prison, just minding her business, doing her bid, and she gets let out soon. She gets let out, and she's giving us stuff. She walks outside, and John's in a limo, and pretty much says, "Hey, what happened was wrong, but I need a favor from you." Marcy, talk about the favor that John is asking her.
He's pretty much saying, I need you to come live with me, live on my ranch. Beth won't be there too much, so you don't have to worry too much about her. And then, like, I need you to advise me. I need you to help me understand the way you think so I can understand the way environmentalists think and be able to maybe like get one step ahead of them, right? And she's like, well, this has to be professional. I was in prison for a year, but I'm still not gonna fuck you. But like maybe like that goes out the window when they're on their ranch. But I mean, we could definitely see that coming whenever he was having lunch with Linnell and he's like, oh, like I can pardon people like now. And she's like, yeah, you can pardon them at any time. So one, like, how did he not know that a governor can pardon somebody at any time or grant clemency? And then two, like, we knew that that was coming because I think he really did have a really soft spot in his heart for Summer, not only because I guess they, had some kind of relationship in the last season, but also I think like he understood that like she's got like some code and like some values that she's trying to save and protect. So he could respect that part of it. Maybe he didn't agree with what she's trying to stand for, but he respected that she had something that she was wanting to stand for. So I'm really interested to see like what comes of that, because we did see like that really great scene of her and Beth in the kitchen and then, just fighting like old times.
Yeah, John and Summer both come from like this altruistic point of view. Like you said, like just being passionate about something. I remember both of them. I think first with Summer and John when they were riding in the car, and he gets out and he's helping this calf get back in the fence and stuff like that, and she's seeing like, you really love this shit. Like, and I think John also saw that with her in the protests and all these things. It's like, no, you really believe, you really love this shit. So they both come together from like the same place, just on opposite sides politically of the spectrum. So I think it was always meant for them to come back together in some shape, form, or fashion. They're absolutely going to end up fucking again. Like, I don't see how. Come on, I don't see how that's not going to happen, but that's definitely going to happen.
What you mean going to happen? What you mean? It already happened.
Well, no, I'm saying like again. Like she said that like ominously, like, yo, we're definitely not fucking. Okay, sure, Summer. That's That's Kevin fucking Costner. What are we?
Thank
uh,
you.
This is Dancing with Wolves, bro. This is Mr. Dancing with Wolves,
that was
dog.
a fucking bodyguard. Come on, man. I was old enough to remember what women were saying, black women were saying about Kevin Costner in 1992, man. Anywho, um, so like Marcy, very interested to see how this relationship plays out going forward. How they blend in her completely opposite political views with his in his role. How can she be an asset? The trailer for next week was Beth kind of warning him like, hey, this is your worst enemy. I don't think it'll be that, but I definitely think it's going to be contentious in so many ways that it has to be like with this stuff, the way how stubborn they both are about their beliefs. Um, but obviously John has his leverage over her, like getting you out of jail and being governor and such. But Summer's very strong-minded. She's really, she's not just going to back down because he's governor. You know what I'm saying? So I'm really interested in seeing um, how she can be an asset to John in his governorship while still staying true to her beliefs and such. And I mean, also another, subplot is her and Beth, right? Like this is really going to test a lot of Beth's impulse control, or at least her working on said impulse control, because she sees Summer as a threat. And I don't blame her seeing her as a threat politically. I think Beth is a little out of pocket seeing her as a threat, like domestically, but that goes back to Beth being Beth and just seeing everybody and everything as a threat and only knowing to attack and not really being able to, like so many other characters in the show, being able to step back and see the bigger picture and then react. Beth doesn't know how to do that, so that's definitely going to lead to more contention between her and Summer, which is going to lead to more contention between her, Beth, and John.
But that's the thing with Beth. Like most of the people that present challenges or presented threats were women, and not just women, but women that John dealt with romantically. You saw that with Linnell in season one when Linnell's walk. I don't know. Linnell had on the mother's robe. No, John got mad about that. But Linnell's coming out the house, and Beth's pretty much confronts her. And it was from a connection with Beth's mother in the past, and they go back to season four. With John messing with I don't know her first name. I'll just call Miss Higgins, but with John messing with her in the cabin, and Beth I think those like a jar at her or something like that. It's like all the threats that Beth um actively seeks out or tries to oppose are women that I don't want to say John's trying to replace, because John loves his wife, but you know John John is also a man, and he needs to move on. And I think Beth doesn't want John to have a emotional connection with none of these women, because episode three, Beth pretty much tells her father, you need to get laid. But like what I got out of that was, you need to get laid, but don't have an emotional connection, because my mom is the only connection that you would need, and ever and what that's it. Like need and only need. And that goes back to the child trauma that Beth had, feeling the blame of losing her mother the way that she lost her mother in that horse accident. And I think that's Beth trying to make up for that by saying, I failed you as a mother, but at least for me, let me try to like keep my father at bay and not have any emotion towards anybody else, to replace you. That's what I got of that. What you guys think?
I feel like Beth has a lot of issues and she's dealing with a lot of like PTSD, and that needs to be sorted out. But I think she doesn't want to be replaced in John's life as like the woman, and not in like any kind of like weird like sexual way. I don't think it's that. I think it's more like she feels responsible for her mom's death, so she feels responsible for her mom not being in her dad's life. So I think she feels like she's taken on that role, for him, just being another woman that he can love as a daughter. But I think she's just so scared of being replaced or John loving somebody else. She can't comprehend that he can love somebody in addition to her, right? Not instead of her. And I think it's because she has so much guilt, right? Um, she thinks like her father just may stop loving her because it was her fault that her mom died. So I think maybe that's where that stems from, and she just does not want to be replaced. So yeah, she's just got a lot of issues to deal with. And I think a lot more this season because they are showing so many flashbacks. And I think that's just indicative of like everything that's going on in her mind. I think they're building it up for her to maybe just have some kind of like nervous breakdown at the end of the season.
Also, like to piggyback, like she feels responsible for John. Like these children have been indoctrinated their entire lives that it's the Duttons against everybody. Everybody's coming for us. Everybody's a threat. It's like the Lannisters. You know what I'm saying? It's we don't trust anybody who's not us. So these women coming in are perceived threats to John by Beth because is this not what John has been telling her, forever? So, like, so she feels that responsibility in so many different ways. Like, yeah, like Marcy said, she feels responsible to be the main woman in his life, to offer the counsel and all those things. But she also wants to make sure that everybody knows she has her claws out and she's willing to protect her father at any cost, because protecting her father is protecting the family, and that's been job number one for all of these kids, man. All of them have had to live their lives basically as a tentacle of John Dutton. Jamie had to go to law school, not to be a lawyer like he probably always dreamed or maybe always dreamed, but he had to be the family lawyer. Beth had to go to college so she could be the family fixer, the family accountant, the family whatever. Casey is the family muscle. Like, Lee was the family cowboy. Like all of them like were tentacles of John Dutton in some type of way. So they don't really know a life without John. Like they don't know how to like really detach themselves from him. And Beth most often, because more than the rest of the kids, more than the boys, because she's always been daddy's little girl. She's always been the most aggressive one. She's always been the biggest fighter outside of Casey. Casey's a trained fighter, but like Beth is always down for a fight. Always. Casey is not always down for a fight. He's just better at it. You know what I'm saying? So Beth ultimately, like Beth feels responsible for him. Like she feels like she needs to be his consigliere. Like I need to be there to take these bullets for you. So that's what I mean. And it just these women are a vehicle of that, dynamic that she has.
Man, y'all bringing it today, man. With this Beth psych eval, man. I agree with all of that. I think Beth feels guilt with her mother's death. Marcy, I think Beth feels fear of like being replaced, as the one woman in John's life. And then and T, I totally agree with the tentacles. Like every single position these kids were put in were in benefit of John and this ranch. So I could not agree more with all that's being said. Um, Last but not least, I want to say this for last. Sarah Atwood in the dinner meeting that became a nightcap. So in episode 3, they talk. Sarah Atwood meets Jamie for the first time. Jamie is disgruntled on stage when John receives nomination, sees the governorship position, and Sarah peeps that, and wants to meet Jamie in person and talk about the conversation and easements, the airport, the casino, the land property, the apartments, and all of that. And they have a dinner that wasn't really a dinner. So they drink literally a couple of drinks. They go into the bathroom and they get it in. You know what's funny though? The minute Sarah put her purse down, I knew I knew someone was gonna see that. I knew Beth was there. I was like, man, she gonna get in that purse and find some information. Marcy, what was your take on that scene with Jamie, and what do you think this takes Jamie as a character going forward?
I mean, she hit him with the classic, how the hell are you still single line? And he fell for it, like hook, line, and sinker. And I'm like, Jamie, like that is a line. She is trying to like get you. Like this is very obviously a line. But he fell for it. Um, so I was like, come on, Jamie, this is a stupid move. So I didn't know what Beth was going to do when I saw her there. I was like, is she going to take pictures and like maybe tell the baby mama, and like maybe that's how she's going to try to take the son away from him. But no, she just tried to get some more information. I thought she was going to steal the purse at first. I was like, what are you doing? But she just, took pictures of like her ID to try to get more information about who she is. But Jamie's being played, and either he's also playing into it because he has an agenda, or he's just very stupid. So we will see what happens with that.
I don't think Jamie is used to getting pussy. That's I think this is where it all stems from. Um, Jamie really thinks he's desirable, and to all women, because for this woman to be an enemy of on a threat to your father's ranch, and all of a sudden you think this woman has any type of romantic interest in you, shows me that you have limited experience with women. T, what are your thoughts?
I mean, or you're just searching for like some type of validation, and she offered that validation for him in that moment. But what is the theme of this episode, man? It's impulse control, man. Impulse control. Um, I was hoping, I guess maybe I'm giving Jamie some credit. I was hoping that he was able to see the play and like, hey, there's no rule against fucking an enemy, you know what I'm saying? But you have to understand that that's the enemy throughout the act, So we'll see next episode if he's seeing the play being made, because the play is definitely being made. Like again, this one just last episode, we saw that she was sent to destroy that family, and that they specifically singled out Jamie as a vulnerable point for that family. So she's clearly playing them. And we'll see, episode 5, if he understands that and he's like, hey, let me also maneuver the situation to my advantage. And or if he's just a fucking moron, like, California girl. But we definitely will see.
So to some comments through the chat, Brittany, who has not seen the show yet, it says hell hath no fear, hell hath no fury, and as we say in the South, bless his heart. I think that was in regards to Jamie. Texas Party Head is like you, Marcy, hoping that Jamie has an agenda, but I don't think that's the case. He's weak. So I agree. I think, and also to go back to John as well, like this is a fight, and I think Atwood said this during the meeting. They can fight this for years. Their pockets are long, and they can fight it beyond the 2 terms or the term that John plans to be governor, even for 2 terms. Let's say is governor for 8 years. They have money to fight this in court for years to come. So even though John has created this easement case with his land and the airport and the casinos, it's only for so long that you can do that, because I mean John doesn't have the money to fight this. The state of Montana, I don't think has the money to fight this compared to what market equities has. So this is a long con, and Sarah's pretty much saying, I mean, you might be winning today, but the war is far from over. And I think Sarah's doing a great job of just pretty much just trying to find a weak point for Jamie, and finding a way, because for Sarah, if she can find a way to make this whole administration implode from the inside, whether it's Beth or Jamie, she's gonna find a weak point. So I can't wait to see what's gonna come out of this. Another thing that caught my attention too, Sarah might be 5 steps ahead of everybody else, because I know when Beth stole her ID, she tried looking her up, and that's not even her real name. So it makes me wonder who she really is, and what's
Or did she intentionally put that purse down? Did she see Beth there at some point?
ah.
Yeah, like that'll be something, that's thinking 3-4 steps ahead. And if that's the case, then hey, this might not be a woman for us to fuck with. Like,
I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that.
if that's the case, she might be her.
That was
Really
very
her.
surface level, like Googling that they showed Beth doing too. She like typed the name and then she looked at like 2 people and she's like, well, that's not her. And I'm like, you need to like do like some more digging. I mean, like that's just, very surface level. So
And also, you're the chief of staff of the governor of Montana. Like, you can't get somebody to do that for you. Like,
right.
somebody on staff can do that. They can find this woman like in 10 minutes.
Background check. Yeah.
But again, this is like Beth thinking at the ground floor level. I mean, she's not, and she's a very smart woman. Like she's very articulate. She's very smart, very bright. But when it comes to this is government shit, man. This is beyond just getting your hands dirty physically and beating up bitches in the bar. Like you gotta come with a plan of action, and think bigger than the ground floor. And like Texas Potter has said, she hopes that Beth meets her match. I think she will with Miss Atwood. So um, guys, any thoughts on the episode as a whole, man? Like I thought, what do you guys think, Marcy?
Again, I think it was slow, but setting up some things that will hopefully pay off in the end. But I think what we're seeing is like the slow and steady like burn of Beth, and she's definitely headed for some kind of breakdown. Because I also think that she's not like her game is not a level like it had been before. So we'll see what happens.
I
And what do
thought
you
that
guys
this.
think? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I thought that this episode moved the season forward a little bit better than last episode did. Last episode, I felt like they had to get some characters in there. It's like, hey, remember remember them? Like they're still here. This one was more focused on the main characters. I love, like I said, I love the little moments, like the little dialogues between like two characters at a time. Um, so yeah, slow, but like I said, slow in a good way. So can't wait for next week.
Man, thank y'all, Marcy, Tristan. Thank y'all so much, man. You guys and gals are the newest people, newest team members to the Watchers, man. And like I said, it's great to have you guys here. Y'all diversified our group so much more with your skill set and what y'all guys watch. So thank y'all again. Speaking of watching shows and movies, if you guys have any input what you want us to cover next, this the fall season now. A lot of shows are out. Please hit us up on Watchers of the Basement. Follow us on all social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Watchers Basements. So don't be afraid to leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, get all the latest episodes. And Brittany does a great job. Who's our coordinator and planner of our episodes, does a great job of planning everything ahead of time to show you what's on the slate for the next few weeks. So, again, for myself, for Marcy, for Tristan, thank y'all so much. Please give us a 5-star rating on this episode and on our podcast group. And y'all be good, man. Y'all be safe.